So today is a pretty significant milestone in military aviation history.
A really big one.
Yeah, if you're tracking defense technology, especially how air power has evolved over the last couple of decades, you know exactly why January 11th matters.
Absolutely.
Because it was 15 years ago today, January 11, 2011, that the J-20 fighter jet, well, it successfully completed its very first flight.
And that single flight was just... It was historic, not just because a new plane was in the sky, but because it officially marked China's Air Force entering the stealth era.
Right.
That is a fundamental, a whole generational change in strategic capability. It just instantly reshapes the power dynamic in the air.
Absolutely. And we've been really digging into the analysis of this jet, looking specifically at the breakdown from military commentators like Zhang Tuifeng to get a handle on what technical advancements really make this a true cutting-edge fifth-generation fighter. Okay, let's unpack this. What is it about the J-20 that makes it so potent, especially when we talk about, its invisibility and its almost impossible sounding aerodynamics?
Well, our deep dive is really focused on those technical differentiators. The J-20 is defined as China's own domestically developed twin-engine heavy stealth fighter, and it's built around three core things: high stealth, high situational awareness, and this is crucial for a heavy fighter-high maneuverability.
Yep.
And the strategic experts we studied, they look at this jet and they call it a force multiplier. Our whole mission here is to explore the specific tech advantages that, justify that title.
That whole concept, the stealth era, that's just so key. When an Air Force goes from relying on visible fourth-gen planes to fifth-gen stealth assets, the entire operational rulebook just gets torn up.
It really does.
You're not just flying faster. You're changing where you can operate and how you engage.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The J-20 is described as supporting a new height of combat capability because its role isn't just passive defense.
It's aggressive.
It's about aggression and control. It's the tool you use to control the whole engagement zone. The analysts we read highlight three very specific roles that leverage that stealth advantage.
So the core mission, what are they sending the J-20 in to do first?
First and foremost, it's using that stealth to gain air superiority, what they call Siger or Zikungquan.
Okay.
It has to neutralize or eliminate the immediate threat, usually high-value enemy assets. The second function, though, is where it really earns that force multiplier status.
Right.
It acts as the initial breach. It opens a path for the forces that come after it, forces that might be less stealthy, so they can follow safely. It's the invisible tip of the spear.
The ultimate pathfinder.
Exactly. And the third role is direct penetration, creating major gaps or weaknesses in the opponent's layered air defense system. It's designed to break the enemy's perimeter by flying where older planes just couldn't go.
And it enables those deep strike missions because it was their first stealth fighter.
That's the key.
We use the term stealth all the time, but it can be a bit misleading. When we talk about a fifth-gen jet like the J-20, we aren't really talking about visual camouflage, are we?
Not at all. Primarily, when we discuss advanced stealth aircraft, we are talking about radar invisibility.
Okay.
Specifically, minimizing what's called the radar cross-section, or RCS. And yes, the J-20 has certain infrared stealth features to guard against heat-seeking missiles, but the core design challenge, the thing that defines this generation of fighters, is beating radar.
And this brings us to what I found to be the most counterintuitive and honestly the most amazing little detail we pulled from the technical analysis.
It really is.
It completely reframes how you think about designing a plane that just vanishes from a radar screen.
It challenges the assumption that I think we all grew up with. Most people, and I'd include myself here, we assume stealth tech is all about the magical materials, right?
The secret paint.
The expensive coatings, the secret space-age carbon fiber. Yeah, it's all about the paint.
I always thought it was like 90% special paint and 10% shape.
Yeah.
And I find this statistic just astounding.
The analysis we reviewed, it makes this really bold assertion. It claims that for radar stealth performance, the external shape, the form, the fundamental geometry of the aircraft.
The way it's built.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That alone is responsible for a staggering 80 to 90% of the performance contribution.
Wait, 80 to 90%? That's almost all of it? So the shape of the plane is vastly more important than what it's made of. Here's where it gets really interesting. If the materials are secondary, just 10 or 20% of the solution, what's the fundamental physics guiding that dominant 80 to 90% design philosophy?
It's all based on geometry and deflection. The principle is actually pretty simple. Radar works by sending out electromagnetic waves and then listening for the echo.
The return signal.
The return signal. So Stealth is achieved by shaping the aircraft so that any radar waves that hit it are physically reflected away or scattered, and this is the critical part, they do not return to the radar that sent them.
So it's a complete physical redirection.
Exactly. You have to picture the J-20 as having dozens of these tiny, precisely angled surfaces, all working like tilted mirrors. They aren't trying to absorb the energy, not primarily anyway. They're trying to deflect it safely off into empty space, making sure no echo gets back to the source. If the radar can't hear the echo, the jet is invisible. The real trick for the engineers is making that work from every angle and for every radar frequency at the same time.
Wow.
And they really engineered the J-20's geometry to nail that.
That's a fascinating inversion of the standard defense narrative. We often think of planes like the F-22 or the B-2 as being made of some kind of unobtainium.
Right, some magical material.
But the J-20 sources remind us that stealth at its core is just applied physics and geometry, not magic.
It is. The shape is the technology.
Okay, so let's drill down into a classic design problem that really tests that 80 to 90% rule.
Yeah.
The engine. Jet engines they're terrible for stealth.
Horrible. A nightmare.
They're big. They get hot, and those massive spinning fan blades are basically a perfect radar beacon. How did the J-20's designers use geometry to hide that highly reflective engine face?
They hide it using what's universally recognized as a key stealth solution, the S-shaped air intake duct, or just the S-duct.
The S-duct. Help us visualize that challenge.
Okay, so think about the duct that feeds air from outside the plane back to the engine. In a non-stealth fighter, that duct is often just a straight shot.
A direct line of sight.
Right, giving radar a clear view of the compressor blades. But in the J-20, that duct curves dramatically. It forms this gentle, sweeping S shape between the intake and the engine face itself. And the function is beautifully simple. The S shape physically obscures the engine. You can't bounce a radar signal off something you can't see, and that curve just stops radar waves from getting a direct hit on the reflective fan.
So it's not just a casual bend, it's a specific mathematically precise geometry that has to be perfect, right? Because even a tiny glimpse of those spinning fan blades would light up a radar screen like a Christmas tree.
Absolutely. That's the 80 to 90% shape solution at work. The geometry is solving the main problem.
So if the shape does all the heavy lifting, why even bother with the materials? Is that last 10 or 20% just some kind of expensive insurance policy?
It's absolutely necessary insurance. The materials are there to finish the job because even with perfect geometry, some radar waves will inevitably scatter or leak through. So absorbent materials and coatings are applied inside those S-ducts.
To catch the stragglers.
To soak up any waves that manage to bounce down the pipe, and they're also applied across the entire exterior of the jet.
So the materials are basically dampening any signal that survived the geometric deflection.
Precisely. They're mitigating the secondary reflections. And we can't forget the cockpit canopy either. Even that transparent surface gets a special treatment, often a thin conductive layer, to stop radar from reflecting off the metal inside or even the pilot's helmet.
So it's the synthesis that matters.
Yes, the reduction of the RCS comes from that comprehensive design. The shape leads the charge, and the absorbent materials provide that crucial backup.
We've established the incredible stealth capability. But here's the tricky part. All that angular geometry you need for stealth often makes a plane handle like a flying brick.
Right. They're usually design antagonists.
High stealth and high maneuverability. So how did the J-20 overcome that fundamental conflict in design?
That is the next big technical leap we need to talk about. If the J-20 is going to gain air superiority, it has to be able to turn and fight if it gets discovered.
Sure.
And this is where the jet's distinctive flight control setup comes in. The sources repeatedly highlight a specific aerodynamic layout, the lift body canard configuration.
Lift body canard, that sounds very advanced, and the sources made a huge claim about it.
They did. The commentators assert that this specific combination, the lift body with the canard layout, is worldwide original exclusive. That's a powerful claim to technical innovation, and it demands attention. To understand it, we need to focus on the canard itself, which is that small secondary wing way up at the front, ahead of the main wing.
And what's the secret to this particular canard design? How does that little front wing give so much extra lift to what is, a heavy fighter jet?
It's all about creating controlled chaos and then channeling it. You have to picture what's happening to the air as the plane moves. As the J-20 maneuvers, that small canard generates these extremely powerful, focused columns of spinning air.
Vortices.
Aerodynamicists call them detached vortices. Think of them like two powerful contained whirlwinds that sit right on the leading edge of the main wing.
Mini cyclones just flowing right over the wing surface.
Exactly. And these aren't just minor currents, they are powerful disturbances that dramatically accelerate the airflow over the main wing's upper surface.
And why is that important?
That accelerated airflow is the key to lift. By speeding up the air, the J-20 significantly increases the wing's overall lift capacity without needing a massive drag-inducing wing.
So it's using controlled, channeled turbulence from the canard to essentially supercharge the main wing.
That's a great way to put it.
Allowing for tighter turns, better control at low speeds, and superior high-alpha maneuvering. That connection, the forward wing creating a cyclonic effect to boost the main wing's lift. That is a brilliant workaround to the stealth compromise.
It is. It's a critical piece of engineering that ties together the high stealth requirement, which, again, often hurts conventional aerodynamics, with the need for high maneuverability for a modern air superiority fighter.
That claim, though, worldwide original exclusive, that's a bold statement. I mean, the specific integration might be unique, but canards have been used before, right?
Yeah.
On the Eurofighter Typhoon, for instance.
That's a great point. And the exclusivity, according to the analysis, is in the integration with the lift body fuselage. It maximizes the effect of those vortices across the entire lifting surface of a heavy stealth frame. The J-20 specifically leverages that vortex effect as a core mechanism to overcome the natural drag and instability you get with sharp-edged stealth designs. It achieves this balance of low drag cruising and high maneuverability that few canard designs have pulled off in a heavy fighter context.
Fascinating. So we've covered the geometry, the materials, the specialized aerodynamics. Let's bring it to today. 15 years after that first historic flight, where does the J-20 actually stand globally in terms of deployment and capability?
The operational scale is it's enormous. The analysis we looked at confirms the Chinese Air Force currently operates well over 300 J-20s.
300?
Over 300.
Yeah.
And you might not hear that number all the time, but it's critical because it means they now operate the largest fleet of heavy stealth fighters globally. That production rate and just the sheer number are huge indicators of its strategic importance.
And we also need to note a huge step toward indigenous capability. The aircraft is now using domestically produced engines. That's a massive step away from reliance on foreign suppliers. It ensures long-term strategic reliability.
Absolutely. I mean, moving past engine reliance is the final hurdle for full indigenous capability. And bringing it back to that moment in 2011, there's a wonderful human element captured in the reports, the pilot's experience during that very first flight.
That must have been an intense experience, flying a machine that complex for the very first time. What did the test pilot, Li Nang, say?
It really grounds the technology in human reality. He described flying this massive, powerful, brand new aircraft, saying, and I'm quoting from the sources here, the plane was very sensitive, very obedient, and handled very well. I felt like I hadn't had enough, and then I landed.
I hadn't had enough. That is maybe the ultimate compliment you can give a heavy, highly technical machine.
Right.
It felt good, it was responsive, easy to fly. And it's interesting to remember that footage of this huge moment was apparently kept highly confidential for years.
For a very long time.
Only being publicly released 14 years later in October of 2024. A historic moment kept under wraps for strategic reasons. And just to confirm its continued status as a symbol of air power, the J-20 is still a featured asset at high-profile events, like its recent ground static display at the 2025 Changshan Air Show.
This has really been a deep dive into a jet that is so often discussed as just this monolithic symbol, but we've actually broken it down to its technical core.
To sort of synthesize what we've discussed for you, the J-20's core strengths that make it a fifth-gen fighter are a direct result of physics applied to geometry. First, that unique canard design using detached vortices to dramatically enhance lift and maneuverability.
Solving the stealth maneuverability problem.
Exactly. Second, the strategic use of its external shape, governed by that game-changing 80 to 90% rule, integrated with absorbent materials for superior stealth. And third, that combination results in high situational awareness and the ability to act as that critical force multiplier.
Capable of establishing air superiority and breaking defense lines.
That's
So what does this all mean for the big picture of modern warfare? Well, it illustrates pretty clearly that cutting-edge military strength today isn't about brute force or, maximizing old measurements like speed.
Not anymore.
It's about the incredibly sophisticated manipulation of physics and geometry, the precise redirection of radar waves, the controlled acceleration of airflow to achieve that ultimate advantage, invisibility and superior control.
And that sophisticated manipulation is exactly what is driving the future of aerial conflict. I mean, given the J-20's strategic role in piercing enemy defenses and establishing air superiority, this whole transition from visible, powerful aircraft to subtle, invisible assets, it just fundamentally changes the calculus of modern military doctrine.
It really does.
So if 80 to 90% of stealth comes from shape, think about this. What future innovations in just structural design, purely geometric innovations that manipulate electromagnetic energy or airflow even more effectively, what might we see next that redefines aerial warfare all over again? It suggests that the future battle space might be one on the drawing board long before any planes even leave the hangar.